Catus. Maximus here, this time with a quick review of this EstWing. This would be the 40 ounce or 2.5 pound engineer's hammer. They also have another model like this, which is the 64 ounce or 4 pound version. A little bit heavy. If I'm going to be using one, I already have 4 pound hammers, but I didn't actually have a 2.5 pound. And secondly, in a situation where I'm wielding 4 or 5 pound sledges, I am going to be using a longer handle. These are known as an engineer's hammer, sometimes called a sure striking hammer. EstWing calls this the Sure Strike engineer's hammer. It is made in Taiwan, so EstWing is now starting to move some of their production over to Taiwan, unfortunately. They say a fiberglass handle. It is a fiberglass handle, but they don't mention if it's like just a cheap epoxy resin, which it doesn't seem like that at all. If we look at this handle right here, it gives me a feeling that it is fiberglass reinforced nylon. It doesn't quite have the feel of polycarbonate. It could be, but I think they would advertise if they're using fiberglass reinforced polycarbonate, so I assume that it's nylon. It just doesn't have that same type of finish and texture that just a standard fiberglass epoxy combination has, like on the cheaper driving hammer that I mentioned. So even though they are moving these overseas, this hammer, as far as its physical build quality and the level of quality control that it went through, is actually excellent. These run for about 20 bucks in the big box stores. You can find them online for a bit cheaper. And of course, hunting down coupons. What I'm really discovering is, just like any other kind of shopping, if you're, put in the time and effort to hunt through and find a good price, and then, use coupon websites to find a coupon, yeah, you can really save yourself a lot of money if you really hunt around. This thing, I think, is, even for 20 bucks, is actually just an excellent hammer. It has a really nice overmold EstWing logo, although I don't like their new logo because it kind of looks like F Street Wing or maybe First Wing. I really like the old style EstWing logo because it was just had a little bit more character, and actually the name was easier to read. As far as this nylon, this rubber overmolding actually holding up like the old traditional nylon handles on their forged steel hammers, I'm not quite so sure, because I haven't really seen these prove themselves. As far as a real critique, I mean, everything, the handle is super straight, the head is super perpendicular. We can see the little bead of epoxy when they glued the handle, they press and then glue it. I'm not exactly sure how they glued the glue all the way through it, but they do indeed. So it's well set up. The head's absolutely perpendicular. There's actually nothing to really nitpick, except for they could have put a hole in the handle, even though you may think, well, it's a heavier hammer. You're using this to drive form stakes. You're using this to drive metal fence posts. Any kind of situation where you're looking for a quote-unquote sledgehammer, but that doesn't have a 2 or 3 foot handle. Some places online, and it may be, and I was looking at the 64 ounce, so the 64 ounce may indeed have a 14-inch handle. But I believe they were advertising 14 inches on both of them, and the handle's indeed only 12 inches. Heck, it's only 13.5 inches from the top of the head. So either the 4 pound version indeed does have a longer handle, or they are pushing a little bit on their handle length. So I guess that would be another criticism. Some people do have some issues with these types of synthetic handles, any type of handles on hammers. They can slip out of your hands, especially if you're in dirty conditions. Maybe you're in a situation, irrigation, etc., where your hands are really wet and dirty. Hammer handles can start getting real slick. And that's one of the nice things about having the holes, is really just to prevent the hammer from sliding out while you're swinging and actually have it, throwing it, having it fly through the air. There is no steel core reinforcement, so you could easily drill a hole through there. There's always a second option I like to mention to people. You can usually find these at some type of construction supplies, the industrial supplies. They actually make sandpaper tape. This is just straight up. This right here is probably 80 grit sandpaper tape. It's usually sold as grip tape for putting on like steel steps or any type of steps, but usually like steel or metal steps to prevent you from slipping. But you can get quote unquote, skateboard grip tape that's just in regular 2-inch wide rolls. And of course, wrapping the handle with sandpaper tape will give you a huge amount of grip, and you can always peel it off and reapply it when it wears out. So that's always one good option, is just You know, it will toughen up your hands too by having sandpaper on the handle, but it won't, your hands, the hammer won't slip out. But I did buy this because I didn't have the right, didn't have this size, and I thought it was just made excellent. You know, when they put in the epoxy, it was just, it's perfectly level, absolutely perfectly even. The forging on the hammer, on the head here is, you know, you can look right here on these little thin areas. This would be really telltale if this was not very symmetrical, and it's incredibly symmetrical. Extremely well-defined, well-stamped lettering or words here, you know, drop forged, heat treated. And then on the top, which is actually something very wise, is they put the weight both in kilograms, 1.1 kilograms, and in pounds on the top of the hammer. So that way, when it's sitting down on the ground, it's easy to see what weight you are. And they actually do have a stamping on here. So if you ever find one with just a head, the S11 would be the Taiwanese. The paint job is just absolutely perfect. We can see that the grind on the head is very even all the way around. It's not like a lumpy or anything like that. It's actually absolutely the same on both striking faces. They even have the very slight hemisphere. So this hammer for 20 bucks has, you know, does check pretty much all the boxes except for maybe having the synthetic handle and not being domestically made, because EstWing has been such a company where a lot of people have supported them for a great number of decades. Just because they're domestic and because they're making simple items like hammers where there just isn't a huge amount of labor involved with the manufacturing of a hammer. Because of course it's a more simplistic item, even though there are several operations involved. It just seems that there isn't a huge amount of cost to be cut to making these in Taiwan. And so I've definitely read a few reviews where people have been disappointed by it. But everybody who's actually used these, you know, I haven't been able to find a review yet where somebody's had them fail or they've misstruck and just had this plastic handle totally gouge out, which is a concern. It's one of the reasons people like wood handles. Many times with wood can be more vibration dampening. The second thing with wood is the fact that it is easily replaceable. Misstrike, usually with hammers, it isn't just you hammering so much that the handle fatigues and breaks. It's always when you mishit something. If you're driving, you know, steel stakes or any of that type of stuff and you miss, you hit the handle, the end of that stake really can gouge out a big old piece of it. And on a hammer that would be used by, you know, foundation, or excuse me, a form worker or something, could easily in just a couple of months really beat the handle up enough to maybe make it worry. So we'll have to see how it holds up, how well it actually takes, whether if you end up mishitting that this plastic here and it has enough fiberglass in it that it really just deflects and doesn't get gouged very deeply, which is what I'm hoping for, although they could have probably included a steel ring or something just to help protect it. But that's the deal with the wood handles. They can be a little bit more vibration dampening, of course, being able to easily replace them. There's also some stuff early on, you know, very poor quality and early on epoxied handles really did come loose. I ran into several of those where the heads just started cracking loose, but they really figured out what they need to really keep them on there, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. Otherwise, for 20 bucks, this is just a great hammer for just every time, all the situations where you need something heavier than a regular, you know, carpenter's hammer. But you don't want a big old sledgehammer. So that's why they're called engineering hammers, where you just need, or a striking hammer, where you just need a bit more force. And thought I'd do a overly wordy review of this one, saying, gosh, I mean, it looks absolutely beautiful and it has excellent quality control. So I guess the real deal is just, you know, waiting for some time to pass and seeing how the new generation of EstWings really compare to ones that have been, you know, tried and true and you can pass down to your children. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.